Okay, now let's fetch data from the database, and let's add some data to the database, and let's focus on what is REST API layers. Okay, so the first thing is, when we are fetching data, first we have to create a model for that. So if we see the database, in here, let me connect it again. So in here you can see, here we have several collections. So within a collection, we have several properties, right? So through those properties, we have to create a model, right? So each and every property, if we double click on it, we can see the data type of the property, right? So the first thing is, we have to create a folder within the library management. So I'm going to create a folder called model, and within there, I'm going to create a new Java class called book. Okay, so in here, this is actually our book model class, right? So the first thing is, you have to add an annotation called document, and the collection name is book. So this means this class, that means book class, represent each document in the book collection. So that is the idea of the giving document annotation. This class represent each document in the book collection, right? Then within the class, inside the class, what we need to do is, we have to give our property. So the first one is for the ID. Private object ID. Okay, the next one is the book ID. Private int book ID. Then title, author, ISBN, or publisher, all are strings. Private string title, then private string author, then private string ISBN, then private string publisher, then private int year published, genre string, copies available, int year published, then private string genre, private int copies available, right? So these are the properties. So first we have to give those. Then I'm going to give an annotation within the class called @id. So this means once we give this @id annotation, framework will know the ID should be unique, right? So that is the idea. So the next thing is, we need to have getters, setters, and the constructors within the model class. So instead of manually implementing those, we can simply add some annotation to get those. So the first annotation is add data. So these annotation we are getting from Lombok dependency. You can see here, import, it's automatically import the lombok.data. So once we give this at date annotation, it will take care of the getters, setters, and some kind of string methods, right? And the other one is all args constructor. So that means for the constructor with all arguments. And the other one is no args constructor. That means for the constructor without arguments. Can save it, right? So now our model is ready. So the next thing is we have to create the controller, right? So to have the controller, let's create a folder first. In the library management, call controller. So we can give all controllers within that. Okay, right click on it and let's create a new Java class called book controller. Okay, now you can see here. Since this is a controller, first we have to annotate this one as REST controller. First we have to do that. So the next thing is, since we are requesting something, so here in the controllers, we are actually giving the endpoints. That means the APIs. So then we have to give the path. So in here, I'm going to give some kind of annotation called request mapping. Request mapping. Right? So then within brackets, I'm giving /book. So this means when we are giving the endpoint, first we have to give the path with the slash. That's why we are giving that. Okay. So seems like this didn't import, so we have to import it. Okay. Now the next thing is we have to create a method inside a class. So as an example, in library management application.java, we gave a method, right? So let's comment that one because we don't need that in here because we are going to give different endpoints. So we can comment imports as well. So in the book controller, so let's see. I'm going to give the get mapping like we done before. Since we are fetching data, we are giving the get. So if we are adding some data, we are giving post mapping. Likewise, we will understand what we are doing later. And public string, let's say get all books. And within here, first before fetching the data from the database, let's return a message. Let's say all books. Okay, let's give that message. Let's run the program and see. So this, I'm going to run the program. Okay, no errors. Okay, now let's open up the browser. And let's give /book. Then you can see we are getting the message all books. So that means our endpoint is now correctly working, right? So here I'm going to give a different thing. So let's give this URL from the Postman. So you can download the Postman. I have shared the link in the previous session. So you can download the Postman. So it will look like this. So let's go ahead with a request. So get request localhost :8080/book. So here we are getting that message in here as well. So in here you can see the status is 200 OK. So that means HTTP status. So we might need this status, that means 200 OK, when we are developing the front end part, right? We will need these type of status. So to catch the status, we are going to modify the method using response entity. So in the book controller, instead of giving the string only here, I'm going to give response entity. Within greater than and less than sign, I'm giving string, right? And in the return, I'm giving return new, then again response entity. Within brackets, first we have to pass this message, then comma, HTTP status.ok. Right, so this is the one. So HTTP status.ok means 200, right? To save it, and let's run it. So nothing changed in here. Let's run the browser. Here also nothing. The Postman also nothing. Let's open up the terminal and let's type like this: curl -I http://localhost:8080/book. Then you can see the output as well as the request status 200, right? We can catch it, okay? Now let's pull the data from the database. That means let's modify the method inside the controller, right? So before changing the controller, I'm going to create a repository. So the repository is the one talk with the database, not the control. So the directly control not talking with the database. That repository is the one who is talk with the database. So to create the repository, again, I'm going to create a folder called repository. Then within that, I'm going to create a Java interface. Now, not a class, now it is interface called book repository. Okay. So in here, first we have to annotate this one as a repository. Okay, done. Then book repository extends Mongo repository. First one is the book and the other one is the object ID. this should be import, since that is in the model folder. So the thing is, this means Mongo repository, this is generic type. So through these extents, we are giving that this framework will know what type of data we are dealing with and what type of ID we are dealing. So we are going to deal with the book details and the ID is the object type, right? So that's why we are giving this Mongo repository. So save that. And the next step is, let's stop running. Okay. Now the thing is, let's create the service. So for that one, again, I'm going to create a folder called service. Within that, I'm going to create a Java class called book service and enter. So this one should annotate as a service. Okay. Then, so if we talk about the service, within this class, we are going to write the database access method. So the dealing with the DB will happen with the repository, but to access that DB, we are writing access method inside the service class, right? So the first thing is we have to have a reference of the repository. So I'm going to create an object from the book repository. Book repository and it from the book repository class. And before that object creation, I'm giving @AutoWired annotation to detect the dependencies automatically rather than giving it in manually, right? Then I'm going to create public list within greater than and less than sign. I'm going to pass book, that means book detail we are going to get. So method name will be all books, like this. So list book is the return type. That means here we are returning the list of the book details. Then return book repository dot find all. So the find all is a predefined method. It will be in the Mongo repository class. So you can go ahead with that one if you want. What is that find all method? That is a predefined one, right? So now the service is ready. Okay. Then let's open the book control again. Now let's modify the method, right? So first we have to get the object from the service class. Book service, like we done in the service class. Let's say book service, and here again AutoWired. And get mapping public response entity. Here I'm passing list book. Here we are going to get the list of books. Get all books. Okay. Return new response entity. here, instead of this message, we have to give book service dot that method which we created in the service class, all books. And HTTP status, okay. So the list should be import, yes, right? Okay, let's save this. And let's run the program and see. Now it's perfectly running. Okay, localhost/book, refresh it. We can see the data in here. To see this one in pretty way, let's open up the Postman and let's give the request. Then you can see our document in a JSON format, right? You can get the things from each and every format. So here I have choose JSON, right? So this is the one to fetch the data from the database. Okay. Okay, now let's see REST API layers. Okay. So let me open up a document. Okay, now let's see. So the first thing is, let's say REST. Let's draw a diagram. So my first one is REST client. Then the API layer. Then application layer. Then data access layer. Finally, database. So in here, these are the layers in here. So this is the REST API. So REST API layer. So the first one is the REST client. Okay. The REST client, then API layer, application layer, data access layer, finally database. So normally, first REST client request. Okay, let's give a arrow. First request. First request. Okay, so first thing is the request part. And on the other hand, once we give the request, it will pass to the API layer. So the API layer in our project is the controller. So that means in the API layer, we are going to specify endpoints. Get, post, put, delete, update, likewise. So in the API layer, we are giving the endpoints. So in our project is the controller. So let me give that one in here. So here actually API endpoints. As an example, get, post, put, likewise. And in our case, that is book control. Okay, so here it is. This is the first part. Once the client request, it goes to API layer. Then after the API layer, it will go to application layer. Let me draw that. Okay, so in the application layer, actually, like what we have in a book service, that means the service class. This is having the business logic. This look like our book service class. Okay, the next thing is data access layer. So this means like our repository class. So that means in here, we'll talk with the DB, right? Here we have the DB operation. So this will look like our book repository. Okay, let's draw an arrow. Then after that, it will go to the database. Then we will get the response back in return. Finally, we will get the response. Okay, so here it is. So from the API layer, it will get the request. Then in the application layer, it will call the our access method. And the data access layer, is talk with the database, right? So here it is. So that is the REST API layers. Okay, so let me repeat that to you. In REST APIs, so usually there are multiple layers. So one of the layers is API layer, which is our book controller. So book controller only concern itself about the task of getting a request from the user. That means the REST client, and returning a response and nothing else. So, and also remember book controller using a service class. That means in our case is book service. If we see the code, in the book controller, we are using book service. That's why we are creating the object, right? And if we talk about the book service, that is the business logic that is in the application layer. This one delegating the task of fetching all books from the database and giving it back to the API layer. So that means here we have the access method, right? So it calls the all books method inside the service and get the list of books and return the list with the HTTP status OK, right? That is book service. So in the book service class, we are using repository class. If you see the code, you can see in the service, we have the access method called all books. And here we are using book repository, right? So the repository class talk to the DB and get the list of the books returned to the application layer, then API layer, then to the client. So if we talk about the repository layer, that means the data access layer of our API will talk to the database and get the data, right? So that is the layers in REST API. Okay, now let's access a single book data. First we get all data. Now we are going to access a single book. So to do that, so within the code, first we have to add the service, code to the service. So the first thing is I'm going to give public, is my access method, public. Here I'm giving optional. Why we are giving optional here? So the optional means here we are going to handle null values using the optional. So because this will not affect when we are fetching all data from the database, but when we are fetching the data as a single element, so it might have like null values. So it will handle once we have once we use the optional one, and inside that we're passing book. Here the method I'm going to give, let's say, single book. Object ID, that is ID. Within curly braces, I'm going to return book repository dot find by ID. This one also a predefined one. So here we are passing this ID in here, right? So that is access method. Let's save it. Now let's open the controller. I'm going to end the project. Yes. In the book controller, let's add a get nothing. Get nothing. Within brackets, I'm going to give slash within curly braces ID. That means when we are giving the path, we are going to give the ID as well. That means we have to retrieve the data once we provide the ID. Based on that, we are going to fetch that book. So the method is public response entity within greater than and less than sign. I'm passing optional book. Then the method name get single book. Here I'm passing at path variable. That means within the path we are going to provide some data. That's why we are giving path variable. It will handle dynamic values within the URL. And here that one will be our object ID. Okay, within curly braces, return new response entity within bracket book service dot single book passing the ID, comma http status dot okay. Here this optional should be import. Okay, the optional one is not correct. Should be Java util one. Okay, let's import it again. It should be Java util optional. Okay, now let's save it and let's run the program. Okay, no errors. Let's go to the browser. First of all, let's get an object ID. Okay, so for this one, going to copy that. And in here, after slash, I'm going to provide that. Then we will get that specific book data. If it is postman, okay, I will give you some kind of a tip in the postman. So in the postman, we can have some collection. That means to get an idea of the API we have. So here I'm giving a blank collection. Let's say library API. And within that, we can give the request, right? So this request, let's close this one. So within this collection, I'm going to have an request, add a request in here. So this will be to get all books. So this will be the URL. Here we are getting all data. Let's save it. Now let's add another one. Going to add a request. So this, let's say, get a single book. So in here, after the slash, providing that ID and send, we are receiving that specific book data. Let's save it. Now we have two requests. One is for get all books and the other one to get the specific book detail, right? By providing the ID. Okay. So that is the fetching data. Now let's focus on adding a book, right? So to do that, let's go to the code. I'm going to stop running. First, like we done before, first we have to give the service class method. Let's say public book add book within bracket book object. Then here return book repository dot save. Save also a predefined method. Here we are passing that book object. So this is the access method. Now let's give the code in the controller. So now this will be a post mapping. Post mapping. Here if you want, you can give a path, but I'm in here, I'm not giving a path. Let's import it. Yeah, it's already imported. Okay. Now the next thing is the method. Public. Here, let's say response entity. Here we are giving book. So the method, let's say add a book, passing at request body. So here the request body means when we are adding a book detail, so we have to add those data. That means the book ID, title, author, publisher. So likewise, we have to add those properties. That means we have to provide some data when we are giving the request. So to give that one, we are giving some kind of detailed list. So that is, we call it as request body. So you will see what is this one when we are run the program. So passing book object. So in here, first I'm going to create an object from the book. That means module class. I'm calling book service dot add book method passing the book. And the other one is return new response entity. So here new book, and here this will be HTTP status dot created. So earlier we focus on the HTTP status. Okay, now it's created since we are adding something to the DB. So the status will be created, and we will see the status number when we are running the program. Okay, save it. Okay, now let's run the program. Okay, no errors. Let's go to the Postman. I'm going to give a new request. Now we are going to add the book. This will be post request and the URL is localhost :port/book. We are not giving anything because we didn't specify anything, only the API method. So if we give the send here, that will be not correct because so when we are adding book details, it should have the details of the book. So let's add those. So we can't add all things in the URL. So what we can do is we can add as a body. So here you can see the option called body. And since we are giving the JSON type, you can go ahead with the row. So what you need to do is you can type the details. So within curly braces, so the first one is book ID, say 4, then title, let's say Brave New World, then the author, let's say something 0 to 1, then the ISBN, let's give a random number, and publisher, let's say publisher 1. Okay, the next one is year published. Let's say 2024. Then genre, say adventure. Then copies available. That one, let's say 6. Okay, so here these will be my new book details. So once you give the details of it, you can just simply click on send. Then you can see the output. So these things will added to the database, and here you can see the status 201 and the name is created. Now the status is different, right? Okay, let's go to the compass. So let's refresh the databases. And here Let's see here, our new one, book ID 4th one, right? So here how we can add the data to the database.